we have a lot that we want to get to, but I actually do want to start on foreign policy because we haven't seen the administration submit a supplemental funding request to Congress yet when it comes to Iran. We heard just yesterday from the House Appropriations Chair Tom Cole, who said that Pentagon is maybe months away for running out of funding when it comes to the conflict. Why do you think that we haven't seen that yet? Does this have to do with policy? Does this have to do with procedure? And when could we expect that to happen?
It's a prioritization on Capitol Hill. So what you heard from Tom Cole is roughly an August date that the Department of War would have some real challenges on funding the Iran war. For Chairman Cole to say this out loud in public is a significant thing, which means the private conversations have not resulted in a supplemental sent up to Capitol Hill. This is a couple of things happening at once. One, the first prioritization is to reopen the Department of Homeland Security and Border Security, and that is still work left undone. You have to have this reconciliation process, the budget process to go through, which is a complex months-long thing. That's not done, number one. Number two, here's some itchiness, I'm going to say itchiness, around policymakers on Capitol Hill about recent decisions the president's made. I'm sure we're going to talk about those things.
Oh, yes, sir.
And then three, you then have to have some sort of formulation of what the end game is, and are we near the end game at Iran? And this has been far more difficult than anticipated, at least at the outset of the war.
Well, just on the notion of some pushback we're seeing on Capitol Hill, we saw yesterday Senator Bill Cassidy, fresh off his primary loss, joining with 3 other Republicans and Democrats to advance a war powers resolution in the Senate. In the House, last time we saw this, it was tied. And I wonder if you think the next time a war powers resolution comes up to a vote in your old chamber that it might actually pass.
It's now up to sicknesses, absences. It is up to people having family issues on whether or not we have the president has the authorization to continue his strikes with Iran. This is not the way you run a great ship of state. And that's how close these votes are on Capitol Hill, both in the House and the Senate. And that's before the latest set of politics around primary elections and what that means. This is a very complicated beast. Before these latest votes on Iran war powers generally, but specifically with Iran. Now, what you've heard from the administration in their testimony on Capitol Hill, both for the Secretary of War, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is that there's a pause, and therefore these timelines don't matter because we have paused our actions with Iran. This is really a question of how do you give Congress enough time to process, but also how do you have clarity on the sort of course of action with Iran. These two things are in direct conflict, especially with diminishing dollars in these accounts necessary to go carry out the war.
But a war powers resolution is largely symbolic, right? Because even if this passes both chambers, it'd end up on President Trump's desk. He would veto it. We probably wouldn't see 2/3 majority to overturn it. Should we be expecting conversations around other ways that Congress could exert its authority? Would that be tied to the future of an appropriations process related to the war? Or at this point, is it a lot about trying to send a message to the president so that the executive branch can take its own action?
Well, Congress is going to have to step in with a supplemental. They will have to. You cannot get around it. These accounts are not big enough for the execution. You cannot replenish sufficiently, and people will go to jail for moving money between accounts if they do it inappropriately. This is serious stuff. And so the Department of War is expert at how to utilize those accounts, and that's what you heard from Chairman Cole, is that the end date is really close. Congress has very few days between now and the August recess to actually deal with this. And the canary in the coal mine are these resolutions. And it says that you have to go give a message, not just to the American people, but to policymakers on Capitol Hill, that you have an actionable plan to bring things to a resolution. And in the backdrop of this are really tough politics for the White House and for my Republican Party.
Well, let's talk more about tough politics. It's pretty tough politics to ask vulnerable members to not only fund a ballroom at the White House, but also essentially to bless a $1.776 billion weaponization fund that could, without restrictions, potentially go to people like attacked police officers at the Capitol on January 6th. How difficult would those votes be to take for your former colleagues? And do you expect they ultimately will will have to. What's the consequence?
Well, in the Senate, Leader Schumer's already said he's going to put the slush fund, the DOJ slush fund, as a part of this reconciliation process. It will be a part of the votes. It will be symbolic, yes, but that is a vote that hurts if you're on the November ballot. If I was a sitting member of Congress right now, I would absolutely hate this vote. It is a no-win situation. You're in the crosshairs with a Republican president who's super popular with a base, and you need to have the base turn out in a midterm election, and then the rest of the American people think this is absurd. And so you're really put in crosshairs. I'd rather be the Democrats on that vote. I would rather be the Democrats on that vote. As far as the ballroom, I think this is blown up into something that people largely don't care about. The president's raised private money to go build something that most presidents have said need to happen. You need to have a secure facility. We just had an event with the president in the most secure large ballroom in the nation's capital, and so it says something needs to happen. Now, this has all been the notion was it's going to be privately funded. What we've then had is a lawsuit to say actually you can't do a full funding of this through private donations. We have laws on the books that say you cannot gift the government certain pieces of technology, certain pieces of facilities. And so they do need authorization from Congress to actually go carry out the rest of the build for the ballroom. So both these votes, one, I disregard the ballroom as like a salient political thing other than a talking point. But the slush fund at the DOJ, when I was a member of Congress and President Obama did this, a sue and settle with liberal and Democratic constituencies, we had a resolution on the House floor, which we passed with Republican votes and a handful of Democratic votes against a slush fund like this, sue and settle slush fund. This has been ramped up, and now you have a majority of the Senate speaking out against it and a majority of the House speaking out against it. This is really troublesome for the White House.
It is interesting to me that these two Republican-led policies are now causing these problems for Republicans on a day that I think it's fair to say this actually would have been a positive day for Republicans, right? Because they're getting through funding for immigration priorities without curbs from the Democrats that they had demanded. That's why we're in this reconciliation process, so that they can get this done with a simple majority. At a certain point, is this a messaging problem or a policy problem for Republicans, when you would have thought that the White House would have been touting that they're funding ICE and CBP?
Yes, but events overtake. And this is what happens when you're a governing majority. Events overtake your prioritization, your messaging capacity, and trivialities of the day can dominate the news rather than the substance of what you're trying to achieve. That's not new. It's just ramped up to 11 here in the Trump era because there's so much noise. Some coming directly out of the White House as a media strategy, but there's so much noise. Border security is still a winning issue for Republicans and President Trump. It has not been talked about as a great success of this administration. They should tout it more, and this should be a great sign of victory. Then you saw just this week as well, the president's priorities on housing came out of the House as well.
I'm so glad you raised this.
Yes.
I did want to ask you about it because the House tweaked the Senate's version, sent it back. It seems the Senate wants to tweak it back, and I wonder how you think this ultimately gets resolved.
I think, as a traditionalist, as a former legislator, right, for 20 years, the craft of legislation is this art of caring about policy, fighting tooth and nails about things of substance that do impact people's lives, that can make a difference, and then largely the body politic says, why are you fighting about that? It's like too specific, right? The specifics here are that you have a passionate group in the Senate and a passionate group in the House, and they're trying to compare who can get the bigger bipartisan majority to move their policy. I think that is a win for like traditionalism and like this process working in Washington. I love it. And French Hill and Maxine Waters, who I spent I spent most of my waking hours with these two folks in my final years in Congress, to see them work out a deal and get a bigger bipartisan majority in the House than in the Senate on this policy issue of housing. It shows that they have stick and they've got the support of the president. Maxine Waters is on a bill that the president would like to sign. Man, oh man, I think it's an awesome thing.
I haven't seen Patrick McHenry this excited in a while. Mr. Chairman, Bloomberg Politics Contributor, thank you for joining us here on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and Radio.